Okay, I'm doing an interview again. It's been a while, so excuse me while I just adjust to the concept. But I'm going to talk with Mike Clucas, who's from FulGaz. He's got a little bit of news. He's the founder of FulGaz, and if you haven't heard about FulGaz, you probably haven't seen anything that I've done in the last couple of months, because basically it's been my go-to training platform while I've been stuck inside during lockdown. I won't say too much about what about me and my riding habits, but I am going to clean up those helmets over yonder, and I will come back and I'm going to bring Mike into the stream. So let's just stay tuned, and we'll talk a little bit more in the next minute or two. Okay, everything's set, and I've got a cup of tea. Mike's going to join me in a minute. I've just got back from a ride, so I might have a bit of a helmet here, so excuse me, but it's been glorious weather. I've been outside, and I have to say that it's with thanks to FulGaz that I'm in great form on the bike at the moment. I may have been stuck inside during the Sydney lockdown of 2021 for 3 months, but I'm happy to say that my fitness is, I'm pleased with it. It's going really well because, you know, I've had the entertainment of the FulGaz image. If you haven't used FulGaz, I'd strongly recommend having a look at it. And I dare say that there's going to be a whole lot of people giving it a whirl in the next couple of months and weeks, especially in the Northern Hemisphere as winter approaches. For us in Australia, where there's been a considerable lockdown, FulGaz has been a saviour. I've published numerous times saying it's saved my sanity, and I stand by that claim. Here's Mike right now. He can probably hear what I'm saying. So I'll just make sure my mic is working, and I'm going to chuck him into the stream. So 1, 2, 3, here he is. Hello, Mike.
Hi, Rob. Good to finally meet you.
It is like that. I'm going to just start this interview by saying thank you very much. I was just explaining in the intro about how important FulGaz was for me during a difficult time in 2021 when we weren't able to ride beyond the 5K limit in Sydney. So it's really helped me out, and I think it's helped a lot of people out. So congratulations on all you've been able to achieve. But you have some big news. I should shut up and I should just throw you into the stream.
Yeah, I'd love to sort of circle back on what you were just saying in a minute. But yeah, the big news is FulGaz is now part of the IRONMAN Group.
I bet you want to just stand up and shout that. Should I just go to full? I'm going to put you on single screen, and I might get you to say it again and explain what it all means, if that's all right.
The big news is FulGaz is now part of the IRONMAN Group. So you might be saying, well, why is a cycling app part of a triathlon company? That doesn't make sense. But it does, because they're the world's largest mass participation outdoor events company. So it gives us loads of resources we didn't have before. We've always previously just relied on subscriber growth, so we can update and improve all our server infrastructure and how the app's made and gathering content and so on. So it's a huge opportunity for us.
It is. There's a release which gives me a little bit of background, and I had a read through that quickly before we had a chance to chat. I'm familiar with Andrew Messick. He's certainly been a mover and shaker in the sporting world for a long time. He's the CEO of the IRONMAN Group. Correct. And he has been steadily picking up assets along the way. So that includes things like the Cape Epic, Rock and Roll Marathon Series. I think, do they also have a stake in the Haute Route Series? Is that right?
They bought it in its entirety, so it's now an Ironman event. So that's a good example, though, because any Ironman Group cycling assets, if you like, will become part of FulGaz. So we'll do Haute Route events in FulGaz, and we're already through that relationship talking to event partners we'd never talked to as FulGaz, like big marquee cycling brands. So there could be some exciting stuff there too.
Well, that's sort of why I referenced it, because my mind's already, like, I've only read the release about 4 or 5 minutes ago, and I understand the concepts. I also understand many of those events. And just based on my experience on FulGaz, where, for example, we've been able to ride or L'Etape de Tour, for example, and get the vision from other events, it must be amazing to have, or just the thought bubble that must be going on in your head at the moment must be ready to explode with the opportunity. Is that right?
It's funny because once people know I develop apps, they go, "Oh, I've got a great idea for an app," and it's like, "Well, do you not think that maybe we have lots of ideas already?" Sometimes though they're good, but yeah, just the notion of being able to bring some of the biggest cycling events from around the world and the best places to ride around the world into FulGaz is really what it's always been about. So there's things we're working on where, for instance, you might have an entire Haute Route stage or the tap stage or a massive mountain ride that, I don't know, most of us wouldn't want to ride the whole thing indoors. This is sort of bringing on things like you then be able to pick whatever section of that you want as your own ride and ride that, or ride that with friends. So it brings on loads of possibilities, yeah.
Will you still have a share in FulGaz personally, or is it now gone entirely to the IRONMAN Group? Is that what's
so we've no, it's a good question. The way that these things work is like FulGaz is now solely owned by IRONMAN, but the way my own deal works is you get some money at the start and then you get potentially an earn out years later. So if you can make the whole thing grow, you get the rest of the money from there. So I've got a very vested interest in hanging around and making things really, really move on and grow. It's not what you could describe as a kind of sellout deal. It's like, there you go, there's the keys to the office, see you later. It's very much a collaboration moving forward.
I think most of my audience would know what FulGaz is, but you want to do a 30-second synopsis just for people who aren't familiar with the concept?
Yeah, sure. So, well, actually, this could kind of circle around to what you were saying at the start, which is FulGaz helped you get through a lockdown because it lets you go to places you like to ride. And FulGaz started because I grew up in England, came to Australia and kind of missed a couple of things. I missed the pubs and I missed the country lanes for riding in. So I went back home and filmed it, some of my favourite rides. And then because my day job was making apps for other people, I figured, you know what, let's try and recreate that in an app. And it just, over time, it grew from that. The premise really is make the most realistic recreation of a real ride you can and have that in FulGaz, and that's what it does.
As an avid user, and certainly someone who's, I spent probably over 3,000 kilometres on FulGaz in the last few months.
How did you go, if you don't mind asking the question, how did you go with your fitness when you got outside?
It's amazing. It's really, really surprising. Like, I've ridden for all of my life, so I understand how to build form if I need to. And to be clear, I've not been necessarily training. I've been riding largely to save my mind, and that I get a lot of satisfaction from the art of pedaling, let's call it. And I did really start to miss going around corners, jumping, wind on my face. I didn't even mind rain on the road when I got back onto the road, which has only been 7 rides. So
right.
Tuesday of last week was the first ride in 96 days for me. And when I got on the road, I was really surprised. This morning I ducked out, did 75 kilometres, and it was just tourism. There wasn't an effort. I don't feel it in my legs. And I give a lot of credit to that, the habit that I built up while in lockdown, and also having the ability to not just go and ride a home trainer, but to be engaged. And so therefore I'm talking to you as a person in the media, but also a fan of the platform you've built.
Yeah. But I think you and I both love the same thing, which is just that escapism, the next way you can explore just going out riding. And really that's what FulGaz was about. It was never designed to be some massive social platform to take on the world or a substitute for spin classes. It was like, I miss riding in cool places that I used to be able to race and train on and just ride on. I want those back. And that was really what drove it. And other people like that same thing, just that bringing that love of riding in, the Wild Valley or California or somewhere like that, and just being able to do that at home. And that's really what that's the guts of it.
Well, if we go back to the IRONMAN equation, for me, I think it's the scope that exists is enormous, because my wife has come to cycling. We've been together over 20 years, and she never really rode until the gyms closed, and then she was looking for alternatives to exercise. And that's when she was introduced to FulGaz. Dinner conversations in our family are so different to what they were 2 years ago, because we talk about, oh, where did you ride today? And what was your average output? And, you know, how much climbing did you do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's introduced a lot of people to cycling. She still just rides indoors, even though she's allowed out. And what I've also found, apart from introducing other people, but I've found it's broadened my imagination, and when it comes to thinking about future holidays, when the world might open up again. And because of FulGaz, I'm pretty certain I'm going to go to South Africa. I might go.
Yes, that's a surprise, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh my, so many lovely places that I've found, courtesy of the vision that you've collected and shared and allowed me to see. So I wonder, with the Ironman relationship, if there's the possibility of expanding their tourism element, which must already be massive, given that their global reach. But is that in discussion?
I think more in terms of expanding the FulGaz library from that side. The real bit that got me excited about the proposal sort of from Ironman was around, like, my original background is actually as a coach, and I continue to work with Cycling Australia and Brent in particular, who's been a phenomenal supporter of FulGaz. So FulGaz gets used at the Olympic level to prepare for events. But with Ironman, their premise was, we want to try and give people the best possible race day. So how can we bring a race to their house, basically? And I'm like, I reckon my whole life's work is doing that. So what we're planning to do is to have an Ironman app for Ironman courses, and bringing way more information to an athlete than they've ever had before. And like I said, breaking the course up into sections. Here's the technical bit. Here's what it's like with a block headwind for the first half, and all that sort of thing on the one side. And then on the FulGaz side, it gives us more contacts and more ways of getting more content. If you think about that stuff from South Africa, that's brought to you and I by people who are really passionate about riding in South Africa. Like, there's my favourite is this called the Cape to Cape ride. I rode that, and I was just like you. I'm like, when can I book a flight? So I think what the Ironman Group will open up is the option to have access to more and more of those people who are really passionate about where they ride, and that's going to be cool.
Yes, 100%. I mean, I have contributed two rides, and both
good. Yeah,
were from between lockdowns in Sydney, and one was the Sydney Olympic course, or very similar to what was raced at the Sydney Olympic in 2000, and there was a great deal of fun, and I want to show people my city, you know, and now that I'm allowed outside again, I look forward to trying to showcase some more of the roads in a town like Sydney, which isn't terribly conducive to cycling, but I think that there's a cultural change that's taking place at the moment, and hopefully all of the stars and the planets will align, and the growth of cycling will continue through and beyond this pandemic.
Look, I hope so. And I noticed you'd been to Akuna Bay for real, as opposed to riding at FulGaz. And I remember going first, my kids had a sporting event in Sydney. I thought, where can I ride? And I've seen this Akuna Bay thing, and I've gone there. And a bit like that South African thing, I've gone there and just gone, whoa, this is cool. So I've gone back, got the camera and filmed it. The more I can keep coming across, and the business can keep coming across people who are really passionate about where they ride, the better FulGaz will get. A
lot of credit needs to go to you and for the initiative that took place during lockdown, which was the Hope Cycle. There were so many things that were good about it. It built a community. It raised over $100,000 for Lifeline, and it also gave me the impetus to make sure that I was regular with my riding, and it allowed me to see parts of Australia that I've never been. At the final stage, we did a Zoom call, as you recall, around Uluru, and I've never been, and I feel like I've at least had a little taste of it now. And
yeah, and
even though it's a very beautiful concept, it does bring you into the real world, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And I think one of the things that's sort of evolving is that when we started, like for me and you probably, when we started riding, you're part of a bike club and everyone tells you what to do. You just kind of follow instructions and off you go. And these days, there's not really that same sort of club culture and instruction on how to ride and where to ride and what's good and what's not. And what's tending to happen within the, within apps, for instance, within the cycling community, is people want direction. So they'll go to FulGaz and they go, oh, that's great, you've got 1,500 rides, but what's in it for me? Where do I go? And really the idea with those events is to give people something more of a challenge. So we try to make them more kind of inclusive. It's not like you're a failure if you're not fast enough. It's about come and push yourself further than you normally would and enjoy that. That's the idea of events in general. But with the Hope Cycle, it's a very personal thing, because a good friend of mine does a lot of work in the mental health space, and she was saying, we're desperately short of money at Lifeline, and I'm like, well, I reckon we could try and raise some money. So we did. We partnered with Lifeline last year for the French tour, and then for the Hope Cycle, we spent the whole year pre-planning what to film to try and do the best course we possibly could. People loved it, so it looks like it paid off, which is great.
Will FulGaz still be considered Melbourne based, or how is the arrangement going to play out for you?
No, it's another good question. So one of the sort of conditions of the sale was that the whole FulGaz team would remain, and that was as much driven by the IRONMAN side as ourselves. They're like, you're doing something right, so we want you all to stay. So we're not going to just steal your logo and move it all to Florida. It's really a case of, whilst their head office is in Florida, they've got offices all around the world. Their office in Melbourne's near us. So yeah, same team, same people, same support people, but it gives us the opportunity to increase the support capacity and just increase everything that we do. From their point of view, it's about they want happy customers because they want the revenue. It's not about improving the IRONMAN share price. It's about making customers happy, because that's what gives you a profitable outcome, really.
My mind is awash with different things that could evolve from this partnership. Do you imagine now that there'll be more event-based footage and perhaps less, let's say, solo rides? So is it going to be that bunch ride aesthetic, or do you understand the idea?
I think what you'll find is, there will be more events, but there'll be more general content anyway. So if anything would be to sort of change, it would be more about how we help people find rides for them. So there'd be more events on offer, but there'd also be, like, we've got even as of this morning, I had a little look, we've got like a couple of 100 rides sitting there ready to go live, and more rides coming in all the time. So I think the percentage would probably stay the same, but there'll be more marquee events to do. And I think a lot of people come to FulGaz because they don't want the equivalent of indoor Mario Kart that you pedal in front of it. They don't want all the, they don't want that sort of big competitive bunch ride thing. They just want to go, leave me alone, I want to go for a ride. I think it's a big part of the core of it, but people also like that group edge to it. But it's not going to, you're not going to suddenly wake up as of next week and discover that it's just this, all of a sudden it's just a group ride thing. But there's no intention to change that.
It's not going to become digitalized in the CGI sense, is it?
I think the thing to understand is the higher level intent there, which is to say, from an IRONMAN perspective, it's like, well, FulGaz works. Keep doing what you're doing because that works. There's a popular niche for that. But let's use all the core technology that you've built to make another thing that appeals to another niche. So that sort of appeals to the IRONMAN community. So that has avatars in it and so on. That could well happen. But it's very much about, instead of trying to make an app that suits everyone and does a pretty half-assed job of spreading itself very broadly, we want to make sure that that's the going out for a ride crowd, and that is the preparing for an IRONMAN race crowd. We don't mind them talking to each other, but to recognise that if you're going to cater for a need, if you cater for that need really well, it'll go well.
That's just the thing about the rapid evolution of this whole notion of smart trainers. It wasn't, 15 years ago, you couldn't have convinced any bike rider that they'd be doing what we're doing in 2021.
No, if someone said to me, you would enjoy riding in the winter more in your garage than going out riding with your mates, I'd go, you're just stupid. But generally speaking, I'm not. Now I've kind of like, I don't have to spend all that time searching for layers and layers of warm clothing. I don't have to spend all that time stopped at traffic lights, dodging motorists. I can just get on it and say, like I was riding in California this morning, you know, and that's kind of the joke at home. It's like, hey, Dad, where are you going today? Oh, it's France. Okay, see you now. It's kind of just trying to mentally get that kind of escapism of like, where am I going? A general habit, people tend to go local and iconic, if that makes sense. So if they live in Sydney, they'll do Centennial Park, Lacuna Bay, outdoors. There's a stereotypical look at a user, but I think it helps reinforce if you know Lacuna Bay or Centennial Park and you can try it and see it and feel it, you've got a much more confidence. If you do outdoors in FulGaz, you can manage that. Okay, you could go there and do it for real.
During the course of the lockdown and the day after day on FulGaz, I experimented a little bit and I started exploiting the slope scaling, and therefore I'm, like you just explained, one of the people who went and rode Alpe d'Huez because I know the climb. I've been there many times during the Tour de France, but very rarely ridden it. I didn't want to do it with the cassette that I have on my bike, so I knocked the slope scaling back, and I really enjoyed the experience. And it didn't. I did it at the end of my tenure on FulGaz in recent times, and it wasn't too hard with the slope scaling. It's a long way to take you to explain what slope scaling is.
Absolutely, So what slope scaling does is you've got, generally speaking, when we ride outside on our bikes for really steep climbs, we've generally got more general purpose out of the factory gearing. So we recognise that in FulGaz as well. Most trainers come with a 28 cassette. That's probably not big enough for most people. So what could we do about it? So what it does is it tells the trainer that the gradient is less. So the trainer's going around as if it's a lower gear, whereas FulGaz still thinks it's the proper gradient. So you don't go any faster. So let's say it's 10%. FulGaz still thinks it's 10% and works out the physics for how fast Rob Arnold would go up a 10% slope. But let's call it 400 watts. But then the trainer, if you've got it set at 50%, the trainer thinks it's half that. So the trainer lets you pedal more quickly. So it just basically it makes it seem like it's a lower gear, but you're not going any faster. And it also makes you realise how overgeared you are normally, because if you're like me, a bit old and stubborn, it's like, I don't need some stupid little old person's gear, and then you realise that, geez, I go a bit better when I do have that. And then you look at what the pros ride and you go, hang on a minute, their watts per kilo is 50% more than mine, and they've got a lower bottom gear than me. There must be something in that.
Yeah. I guess I asked the slope scaling question because I found it a super valuable feature.
It is. And
I think that people might refrain from exploiting it because they think it's sort of robbing themselves of their data, but it's not at all.
So it's really important to understand that there's the message that goes to the trainer, and then so the watts come from the trainer to you, and FulGaz works out how fast that goes. Then FulGaz then sends the signal back to the trainer to tell it how hard the trainer should be. What ends up working, you don't go any faster, but you can pedal more quickly at the same speed.
Okay. As people who are watching this interview may have figured it out, although I've had a dealings with FulGaz, you and I have never met ever.
Correct,
so
yeah.
Should be talking more about IRONMAN, and I apologise for going into some of the other...
we should be talking about what we enjoy talking about. That's
okay.
More interesting conversation, isn't it?
I'm so familiar with talking the language of cycling. It's actually this week where it marks the 30th anniversary of me having been involved in the cycling media as a professional. Oh. So I'm not losing my enthusiasm. It's thanks to innovations like FulGaz that I still, at 51, feel fit, healthy, and energetic. I'm lighter than I was when I was 18. It's not about trying to lose weight. It's just that the pleasure of cycling has remained with me, even when I'm not turning around corners, even even when there's a puddle of sweat forming on the floor and I'm sitting in the living room, not able to go where I want and how I want. And I am surprised at all of that. It may just simply be push one foot down and the other comes up and repeat. But bike riding is much, much, much more than that. And it's great to see the success that's come your way. I congratulate you on the acquisition. I'm sure that you're chuffed about it, and look forward to seeing what comes next from FulGaz and IRONMAN.
Yeah, we'll keep you posted.
Well, thanks very much for having a chat,
Thanks a
and
lot.
we'll watch this space with interest.
Thanks a lot. See you then.